Hello, my name is Gwyn John, and I'm here to introduce the most recent video produced by the English Bowls Coaching Scheme. I'm sure you'll find the subject matter most interesting, and no one has researched it in more depth than our Northern Regional Coach, Derek Bell.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The subject that we are going to consider this afternoon is what we coaches call Bowls Ballistics. Now, Bowls Ballistics really looks at two areas. It's obviously to do with the behaviour of bowls, but we'll be looking at the areas, first of all, of a bowl and the green it takes, how it behaves on the green. The second main area is the area of impact or collision of bowls. As one bowl impacts on another, we'll be looking to see exactly what happens. First of all, to the bowl that is being struck, and secondly, to the following bowl, the bowl that actually does the colliding. Now you'll notice that I have quite a magnificent chute here. The chute in actual fact is made by Thomas Taylor. Their firm operates out of Glasgow. They made it for us. Many of the bowling bodies actually have a chute of this kind because they do retain the right to test any bowl against the standard bowl on any green where they are operating a tournament. So, we have the chute, and you'll notice that in the cradle at the top of the chute, I've got a standard bowl. Have you ever seen one of these? Would you like to have a look? That bowl is the bowl that all other bowls must conform to. It is actually, it has the minimum bias that any bowl is allowed to have. So any bowl compared with that must take the same sort of green or more green. In other words, it must have the same bias or more bias. So for our control this afternoon, we will be comparing bowls against the minimum bias bowls, or as it's often called, the standard bowl. In fact, our first session today will simply be to look at the standard bowl and to look at the green and examine very carefully the green that it takes. So the two controls so far, the chute eliminates people's delivery. I don't know whether you've noticed, but you've often heard people say, that bowler can hold a tight line with his ball. It's something to do with delivery. If the delivery is faulted in any way, then it can affect the running of the ball. You want to say something, Gwyn?
I was going to ask Derek, and there are many manufacturers of bowls these days.
Yeah.
Are they all allowed to produce a master bowl?
No. There's one master bowl. That, again, is made by Thomas Taylor, and then from the pattern, several standard bowls are made, and the standard bowls are actually held by the various bowling bodies.
Thank you.
I'll put it back on the chute. The other control that we're going to look at, so the standard bowl, which we'll compare bowls against later on, the chute, which eliminates a person's delivery, and at the far end, you'll see there's a jack there, and the jack is placed at 30 yards. So we're going to use that as a control for the first session. Would you like to see the ball released? Let's just have a look and see what happens to it. Provided the temperature stayed the same, and I haven't moved the chute, there she goes, sweet as a nut really, up the green and heading towards the jack. And let's see what happens. Well, gentlemen, you can't do a lot better than that. We've finished virtually in the line, and the jack is slightly forward of the ball. But that's a pretty good delivery, isn't it? Thanks for helping me to map the centre line of the green. You've done a remarkable job there with those yellow stickers. We can see it very clearly. Would you, or could I ask you to help me a bit further? Would you help us to map the line taken by the standard ball that Keith is going to roll down the chute?
Well, yep.
For that, if you stand about 2 yards apart, let the ball pass. Just as it passes, you put the sticker down and will gradually map the whole green line right up to the jack. So if you'd like to do that, I'd be grateful. Thank you. When you're ready, Keith. Well done. Oh, that's great. Nice, consistent delivery.
Thank you.
Keith, would you like to release it again? And if our group can come further down the green and then put some more stickers down. Right, are we all ready? As soon as you're ready, Keith. Oh, very good. Not bad. Very good. Very good. Very good. Well done. Well done.
Follow them all up.
Now, what we'll do, if you'd like to move down to the nearer the chute, then we'll release the bowl again and fill in the gaps or change any stickers that aren't quite right. Watch the line of the bowl. Thank you. There you are, Keith.
There is one out.
I think that one may want to come in a bit. What do you think?
The one working from the left.
I was going to say, that one might...
We're not on.
Let's go here.
I think the one where Dickie might be too, but anyway...
This one through there.
Coming up now.
Yeah, let's just watch them over there. Watch them over there. Right.
Yeah, he's 3 or 4.
Just try again. That one there's out. That one there's out. Those last two are just half an inch out each time. No, not the last one. Next to the last.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I've placed a tape on the green taken by the standard bowl. I've placed the tape, it's about 3 yards long, and it's parallel to the centre line, which is marked with the yellow dots. Now, as you can see, the tape is showing us the widest point of the green taken by the standard bowl. I wonder, Gwyn, would you like to get hold of the end of this tape, and we'll just measure how far first of all, the tape is from the centre line. So looking at this line that's virtually parallel to the centre line, you can see that it's around about 5 feet 8.5 inches. So the ball moves out to that particular distance from the centre. Now, which do you think is actually the widest point that we've established with?
Well, looking at these wider dots, I should think about here.
About there, right? Well, let's have a look at the actual widest point that the ball achieves. And there it is. It's marked at 5 feet 10.5 inches. So the ball takes its curving path, it's curving all the way to the jack, but at the widest point, just before it starts to curve in quite heavily towards the jack, then it achieves a width on this particular green, on this particular afternoon, of 5 feet 10.5. Now this is what we refer to usually as bowlers as the shoulder or the breaking point. It would be as well, I think, if we knew how far the breaking point was from the point of release. So we'll measure that if you like.
Yeah, by all means.
Would you like to help, Keith? If you would like to get the long tape. And if Gwyn would like to hold the other end.
You would like to see that I'm opposite that particular white one there, please? Or I'll lay it down. Which one was that? That one there, if you would, please.
Is that about it?
Yeah.
That measures there 63 feet.
63 feet, yes. And the jack is something like 91 feet, just over 30 yards away from the release point, which means that the breaking point of the shoulder is in that area where Gwyn marked the widest point, and it's somewhere in the region of 2/3, maybe a shade over 2/3 of the distance from the release point to the finishing point of the bow. So this is something for us to remember, really, and you've seen exactly how we've mapped it out and how we've found that shoulder. I hope you found that quite interesting, have you?
Indeed.
Yeah, good, good.
And we've got to emphasize, don't we, that this is a measurement that we followed with the standard bow.
That's correct, yes. That's correct. And it is the minimum bias, and even a minimum biasing bowl is taking a green of 5 feet 10.5 inches, which is quite wide, really, depending, of course, as it does, on the speed of the green. We have timed this green earlier on, and we found it was running at 14 seconds. It's not the fastest green. There are many greens that are faster, but on the other hand, there are several greens which run slightly slower, down to 13 or even at 12 seconds. Talking again about indoor greens. Now we're going to release the jack, which is a non-biasing sphere, to run down the chute, which is still placed at the same angle that it was for the greening of the master bow. Obviously, the jack is going to take a straight line, and that line will be a tangent to the curve. We'll just watch that happening. Would you like to release that, Gwyn, please? Now, you can see that the jack is leaving the curve, running in its straight line, which is, as I've said, is a tangent to the curve. And we can see where it's come to rest, considerably wider than the line of the bow. Now that the jack has come to rest, what we shall do, we'll take a yellow tape from the jaws of the chute and stretch it out to where the jack has come to rest. This will show that tangential line quite clearly. Many people would suggest that this is the line along which you must aim your bowl in taking the correct green to the jack. Anyway, we'll have a look at that. Would you like to roll out the tape, please? Now, we would consider this to be the line of aim that a bowler would take when aiming his bow to follow the curve of the standard bowl as it goes towards the jack. So there you can see that tangential line. Well, now we've come to this end of the green, in actual fact to the point where the jack has stopped, and we can see clearly the line that the jack has taken because of the yellow tape. Notice that it's a straight line, and notice how far it's diverged from the curved line of the green of the minimum bias bowl. In actual fact, we're standing at the point which is, as we determined, the shoulder of the green, the widest point of the green of the minimum bias bowl. Do you think, Dick, you could measure the divergence? Because it is quite tremendous, really. Let's have a look and see how far that tangential line has moved out. Can you come across a bit? And there we are. It's at about 5 feet 3.5 to 5 feet 4 inches. So the aiming line diverges from the curved line of the bowl quite considerably. It's a long way, isn't it?
And on this particular carpet.
And on this particular carpet, and remember, we're talking about the minimum bias
Yeah.
bowl. If we were looking at a bowl which has a stronger bias, then it would be taking more green to get back to the jack. And of course, the line of the tangent would even be further out. So probably more divergence. But it's something to think about.
Oh, it is.
Something to think about. Well, thanks. We'll just stop there for a few minutes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're now going on to compare different weighted bowls, different sized bowls, against the standard bowl. But as you realise, quite a bit of time has elapsed since we were on the green. I hope you all enjoyed your tea, by the way, did you? No?
Oh, absolutely.
It's very good indeed. The green is a bit cooler, or it's cooler in this particular area. That might have affected the running of the ball, I'm not sure. So it would be a good idea if we rolled the master ball down to the jack to see if there are any changes. So as soon as you are ready, and whilst we're on, I'll try and time the green, the distance from the jaws of the chute to the jack. So when you're ready, Keith.
Right, going up.
Well, that timed it slightly over 14 seconds. So in fact, it's the same time that we've been expecting from this green when we were talking about it earlier on. Now then, we'll have a look at other bowls. So I leave the standard bowl where it's rested and take the jack away. And we'll have a look at the position of finish of the bowls that Keith is going to roll for us. Would you like to start with a size 5? Just before you do, Keith, Thomas Taylor's standard bowl is a size 5. The only difference I can see between this and the regular size 5 used by bowlers is that this standard bowl is slightly wider, something like a 32nd of an inch. That seems to be the only difference. There is maybe a slightest difference in weight, but we're only talking about a fraction of an ounce, that's all. But however, we are now going to look at a heavyweight, size 5, and this is in the region of 3 ounces heavier than the standard bowl. So we'll look at the heavyweight. Thank you very much, Keith. Taking, as you can see, a similar line. Now it's leading the line. And it finishes considerably under the line of the standard bowl. And therefore, we could say, if it was being tested, that this is an acceptable bowl because it takes more green than the standard bowl. And as you can see, it's something like a yard of difference there on this particular green at this particular time. Would you like to have a look at shall we have a look at the medium weight? Again a size 5, similar weight and size to the standard bowl. Seems to be leaving the line very quickly. And here it is, finishing in fact close to the heavyweight bowl which is beside my foot. Many people seem to think that heavyweight bowls take less green. Well, here's a case in point, rolled on this green, and I'm not suggesting that on every green it always happens, but on this green, the heavyweight bowl has actually taken rather more green than the medium weight bowl. We'll have a look at the size 3 bowls now, So if, when we're ready, Keith can roll the heavyweight size 3, which is leaving the green, taken by the standard ball, and again finishing underneath the standard ball, almost a yard, almost the same length, and again this would be an acceptable ball, accepted by the governing bodies in any tournament that they were running. We'll leave that there and compare it with the medium weight ball as it comes down. Again, it's leaving the line fairly early. And again, it's finished under the line of the standard ball. Run on a ball or two, but again, an acceptable ball. And the last balls we'll look at, a size 0. So you're looking at almost the smallest ball. There is a size double 0, if you like, but this is a size 0. And again, a heavyweight, so it's quite a weighty ball, even though it's quite small. Let's see what happens here. This one is outside of the line. And let's see where it's finishing. Now, it actually passed the standard ball, but it has finished inside the line, and as such would be an acceptable ball. It's surprising, really, that many people seem to think that a small ball stops quickly. But using the shoot, I've often found that the smaller balls seem to continue and continue. I'm not quite certain why that is, but it seems to happen on many occasions. So the size 0. We'd better have a look at the medium size 0 and see if the same sort of characteristic is shown. It's certainly running past. But again, it's finished almost in line with the number, the size 0 heavyweight. Again, another point comes to mind in that people do say, I think I'm repeating myself here, that the heavyweight ball seems to take a finer line. But this isn't always the case. Certainly, if you are working on a fastish, hard, indoor surface, the heavyweight ball has very similar characteristics to those of a medium-weighted ball, as well you could see by the pairs of balls that we've seen. But in each case, every ball there is acceptable to the governing bodies because they pass the test that they take more green than the standard ball. I don't know whether you have any questions on that. There might be something that comes to mind. Might be surprising for you to see smaller balls running on further than the bigger balls, which seem to stop rather more quickly.
I think very often, Derek, the objection that some people have to a smaller bowl is that if they get a reasonable bowl in the head, the smaller bowl can be easily moved out.
Yes.
I don't mean fired out,
No.
or even controlled weight, but in an overdrawing sense,
Yes.
can be moved away.
Yes.
And often, I think people go to a larger size because they're afraid of their little bowls being moved out.
Yes.
Whereas, in fact, the larger size doesn't really always suit them. It would be better to persevere and learn how to use the smaller bowl.
I think you're right. I think comfort is the main thing.
Yes.
And if your hand is suitable for a small ball, it's probably better to use a small ball. And now that you can get the heavyweight small ball, this can come to terms with the business of balls being knocked a long way. However, as we go further, we'll be looking at impacting balls, and we'll have a look at just how much credence can be given to this subjective view that people have. That would be an interesting point to see at a later time. So we'll do that, Gwyn. The next thing I'm going to show you is something that I found to be quite surprising the first time I tried it. I won't say too much about it, but what I've done, I've given Keith two similar bowls. They're actually my bowls that I play with. They're heavyweight, size 4. The only difference is that one of the bowls I put grippo on the running edge. I've been very careful to make sure the grippo is only on the running edge so it doesn't touch the runners of the chute. So the first bowl you see has no grippo. In fact, I've been away and I've washed it to make sure there's no grippo on. That will be the first bowl you see. The second bowl then will have grippo on the running edge. I'll be interested to know your comments when you see how the bowls react on the green. So, Keith, would you send the non-grippo bowl down the chute, please? Here it comes. Yes, it's found a good line.
Oh.
They always behave like that, those boys, even when I deliver it. Now, as soon as you're ready,
He's going to be well short.
Look at this.
Well short.
Yeah.
Look at that.
now isn't that a remarkable difference?
Yeah.
2 yards.
Unbelievable.
Oh, yeah, good 2
Round
yards.
about 2 yards short, and it hasn't come back to the line, so it hasn't greened as well. It's interesting because a lot of people use grippo. Are there any people here who use grippo?
No, but
No.
surely in most indoor greens, there's notices around to say that grippo should not be used.
That's right. That's true. This is only in recent years, really, only the last year or so, that people have found that grippo does mark the green. And I've only showed you this because it actually happens outdoor as well.
Oh,
It
yes.
happens just the same outdoor. But as you play through a game, then the grippo is polished off. So people who are playing with grippo on the balls will probably feel that the green is speeding up, the less grippo they've got on the balls. And therefore, they've got to take account of that when they're actually playing with the balls. So it seems to me it's something worth knowing about. If you do use grippo when you're outdoor, make sure you keep the grippo at the same level throughout the game. Otherwise, you will notice a difference in that you will feel that the green is speeding up. And the next area of bowls ballistics is concerned with bowls impacting on other bowls or bowls impacting on the jack. So that's now what we're going to have a look at. And you'll notice I've only used the very lower end of the chute. It's not necessary to have a lot of velocity. I'm only working over a 3 or 4 yard, about 3 yard area of the green to do this. I'm going to ask Keith in a minute to let the ball take the green to see just where it finishes. Hopefully it will follow the track of the white stickers and come to rest at the last white sticker. Would you try that, Keith? So that's about right. The ball is consistently taking that amount of green and running that distance from the point on the chute that you can see where the release mechanism is. Take that one back, Keith. Now, if I were to put the jack at this point, you'll notice that the jack is placed, and this is a yardstick, at about a yard short, a point about a yard short from where the ball came to rest. Now, could any of you define what, in your opinion, is a yard-on ball, just before we go any further?
Well, it means so many things to so many people.
It seems to.
It does,
seems to.
doesn't it?
But really, I want to be very specific about this. So I'm looking for a very specific answer.
It's just over a draw.
It's just over a draw. Could you be more specific than that? Because just over a draw might mean a foot more, might mean 2 feet more.
Well, if you ask for a yard, it is a yard,
It's
surely.
a yard, all right. So, would you all accept then what's just been said, that a yard on bowl is a bowl which would pass the target by 1 yard if it missed the target?
Yes.
You'd be happy about that?
Yes.
Right. Well, if we then consider that if the ball is released and the jack is not there, it would come to rest at the furthest white marker. If the jack is placed there, and if the ball impacts on the jack, then the ball has been impacted or collided with by a yard on ball, because it would have gone 1 yard past the jack had it missed. Right. Now, what would you think would happen? A ball is coming into the head. It's a yard longer than the jack, but it hits the jack. Anybody like to give me an idea what would happen to the jack? What sort of distance do you think it would go?
How far would it travel?
How far do you think it would travel? Any ideas?
Best part of the yard.
Best part of the yard, you think? Yeah?
Yep.
All right, so would you all think that would be the idea, or would you expect it to go less distance, or more distance, or what?
I would say 2 feet.
You would say about 2 feet?
Halfway.
Yeah.
About half, about 18 inches, something like that. Now, what about the ball? Having thought about the jack, how far do you think the follow ball would go? Or would it follow, or would it stop dead? What do you think about that?
It would follow the jack very closely.
It would follow the jack very closely.
You mean stay with the jack?
Stay with the jack,
I see.
yes.
Stay with the
Stay
jack.
with the jack.
Right? Any other thoughts on that?
I would say it wouldn't travel more than about 9 inches past where the jack was originally.
Round about 9 inches past. So you get a follow through of about 9 inches. That's what you would think. Well, let's have a look and see what happens. Pretty good impact. Now you'll see, in fact, that the ball itself, if I come to the ball first, it actually followed through about half the distance. So about half a yard follow through, whereas the jack itself has moved fairly close to the full yard. It's 3/4 or more than 3/4 in actual fact, isn't it? More than 3/4 of a yard. And the ball hasn't gone as far as the jack. Would you like to see that with a 2 yard on ball? To go a bit further. Would you like to put the jack on the 2 yard? No, the other red. That's right. This time you'll see that I've taken the jack back further, and it's round about 2 yards for the ball to reach there, 2 yards past the jack, if you like. So this, would you accept it's going to be about a 2 yard on ball?
If the ball in the normal circumstances comes to rest at that white spot,
Yes.
that's exactly, yes.
It's about 2 yards.
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Before you roll it, let's just ask the same question. Think about what happened last time. The ball travelled half the distance it would have travelled. The jack travelled close to the distance the ball would have gone. Close to a yard. Not quite a yard, but close. Certainly somewhere between 3/4 and a yard. What about this?
Well, will we accept that the ball is going to be moving faster this time when it makes contact
When it
with,
contacts, yes.
with the jack?
Yes?
Therefore, it is probable to assume the jack will go further.
Than it did last time.
Yes, because
yeah.
the contact is, of course, of a greater strength, a greater pace.
Yes.
As for the bowl, I think I'll go back to what Stuart said earlier, probably likely to stay with the jack. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
There's just one question I would like to ask,
Well, that's... Yeah.
and that is, there's different weight in the indoor jack
Yes.
and the outdoor jack.
Yes. Could I come to that later?
Oh, all right, yeah.
Do you mind if I come to that later?
Okay.
All I'm doing at the moment is looking at what happens on this particular
Yep.
green, but certainly I'll answer your question.
Yeah, okay.
Now, Gwyn has said that he thinks the jack will travel on sort of pro rata, since it's greater pace from the ball. The jack will go further than the 3/4 of a yard to a yard it went before. And you think that the ball, though, will come to rest. Or, no, I believe you said you thought the ball would follow the jack.
Would
because
stay
it's
closer,
rolling ball.
yes, yes.
Think he would stay closer. Right-o. Well, let's have a look at that. Now, if you look at that, you can see that the ball, instead of moving, following through half a yard, has followed through about a yard. And the jack, instead of going something like 3/4 of a yard or just over, has now gone about 1.5 yards. And in fact, if you continue the progression, you will find that you get a pro rata ratio. So you'll always get the ball, when it hits an indoor jack on an indoor green, to only travel half the distance it would have travelled, and the jack will always travel round about 3/4 of the distance that the ball would have travelled. Is that clear, dear? Or do you want to see it again? You happy about that?
Yeah, that's clear.
Right. Now, you asked a question about outdoor, and yes, there is a difference. What I find outdoor is, let's say we're talking about a yard-on ball onto a jack. What happens is that the ball strikes the jack begins to run away from the ball, and you think the same is going to happen, then the jack stops and the ball catches it up. And the greatest distance between them at any time is about 2 inches. So it is different outdoor, and you've mentioned the weight of the jack, but there's also another variable. There are two variables being, one, the weight of the jack that you've drawn our attention to, and the second is there is more friction on the green. So the jack slows down very quickly. It certainly takes the pace of the ball, slows down fairly quickly, but the ball, since it's striking a smaller jack, continues further. So you get this catching up business. And you know, all experienced bowlers know, that when you're playing outdoor, the ball runs after the jack. You can see it. And this is what one of you was actually saying to me here. But in fact, in indoor, on a fastish carpet, the jack runs away from the ball. But notice how much of the running weight has been taken out of the ball by impacting on the jack. And the jack, of course, the large indoor jack is anywhere up to round about a pound in weight, something like 16 ounces. I think the limits are between 13.5 and 16 ounces, so you might have a pound weight in your hand when you're holding that jack, which is quite a considerable weight. Now, as I say, that would happen pro rata. I think it's sufficient to do as we've done because you can see the relationship, can't you? Right. Well, let's go a stage further. And this time we'll forget about the jack and we'll place a bow at the point which is a yard short of where the rolling ball would finish if it missed its target. Now, what do you think would happen there? Notice how the ball is set on the floor. It's lying on its back. The ball is travelling quite slowly because it's a fairly quick green. 14 seconds is not bad. It's a good average speed for an indoor green. What do you think would happen in this particular situation?
When it made contact,
Yes.
it's only going to turn that bowl over maybe a couple of rolls.
Maybe 2 rows.
Maybe 2.
Yeah. Any other ideas?
I would say that ball wouldn't more than pass the spot itself.
Right, yes. You've noticed the red spot to help me. And the red spot is absolutely underneath the edge of the rear edge of the ball. So you wouldn't expect the following ball to pass that red spot. No. But you would expect maybe 2 rows. Yeah.
2 to 3 rows.
We might have to try it once or twice. We want to get perfect impact. Obviously, if we don't get perfect impact down the line, then obviously you won't get the same distance as involved. But let's have a try, Keith. Good impact? How many times? One only. One only.
Yeah.
Would
Now-
it be any different,
Yeah.
Eric? That was, the buyer side was on the top.
Yes.
Would it be any different if it was on the bottom?
We could try it if you wish.
Yeah, that's
We'll
right.
try it if you wish. But before we do, let's have a look at where the ball has gone. And in fact, there is a follow-through. Even at that distance, you can see the follow-through. It's actually past the red sticker by an inch, inch and a half. But watch this. If I roll the ball carefully back to its starting position, you notice? Yeah. Something else has happened.
yeah.
It's not just a roll, is it?
No.
No,
Yeah.
it's a slide as well.
Slide.
There's a slide as well, that's right.
Right.
So the ball has slid and then turned away.
Yeah.
Okay? Now Mabel was wanting to know what would happen then if we put the ball that way,
Buyer side down.
the buyer's side down. Well, let's have a look. There is a difference.
Yes.
There is a difference. Not a lot of difference, but there is a difference. If we were to roll it back again, there you see that same inch or just over an inch of slip, and there we see the same sort of follow-up. But the ball did try to turn over once more.
Yeah.
What would your answer be to that, do you think, Mabel?
Well, the buyer side took it further round
Why?
because of the shape of the ball.
It's rounder. That is a rounder shape than that. That's flatter, therefore it takes a bit more moving. Right? Would you like to have a look at that with a 2-yard on ball and see if you can come to any conclusions before it happens as to what might happen with a 2-yard on ball? So, would you like to put that down, Shirley? And there we are. So if you get the red sticker just level with the back of the ball, and off we go. It was
Right.
three now, yes. 3 now. It was sort of 2.5.
Yeah, it was,
And
yeah.
it hung there for a bit. Let's just make sure. 1, 2. Can I move that to one side? 3. And notice the amount of slip. So you've got just about twice the amount of slip. And you've got something like 2.5 times the roll. And just teed it over. But notice the follow-through. There's a considerable amount of follow-through there, isn't there? For a ball that is only, after all, a 2-yard on ball. It's not a lot of weight, is it? Not a lot. Now, do you want to see the other side now?
Oh, that would be
Right.
interesting.
Thought you
That
might.
would be interesting.
Thought you might.
I've looked at the slide this time.
Yeah. So, if that went 3 times, only just,
Yeah.
do you think there'll be any difference?
Then you go 3.5 and roll it back.
Maybe, yes. Right up. Well, let's see what happens.
1, 2, 3.
Let's follow through. But in actual fact, I thought that ball was a bit of a
Well,
wobble.
I
on it.
thought so too.
Do you think we should try it again?
Try it again.
We'll try it again. There's a bit of a wobble on it.
The other way around.
Sorry,
I'll
oh,
do
dear
it.
me. Right, well done. Well done. So we're actually, but it's 3 good ones.
3 good ones, yeah.
The other one was 2.5,
Yeah,
and then it just managed to teeter over. I think that was right anyway. And the follow-through, mind you, yeah, it's still quite a bit, but
But not as much
Yeah.
as
A
where
little
they...
bit less.
when you think it's gone from there
Yeah.
to there, the front of the ball. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, and that same amount of skid. So although it doesn't make that much difference whether it's on its back or its front, there is a difference. And it's simply to do with the curvature of the bow. Now, having seen that, let's have a look at what happens if a ball is on its running edge. Very often a ball sits in the head like that, and another ball impacts on it. What about this? Any ideas?
Well, it should go further.
Yeah.
It's only a running surface.
Because it's running, so it's not getting that sort of lumpity turn, is it?
Is it a yard on again?
It's going to be, we're going back to a yard on, yeah? How far is it?
I think so that way.
Oh.
This one?
Yeah.
You think it'll travel the full yard?
Best part of a yard.
Best part of a yard, right.
I think it's a bit
Yep.
Looks a bit, does it? Try that. In actual fact, it's only travelled half the way. Follow through, slight follow through. About the same as when it impacted with it on its back, the follow through was there. Let's go back to 2 yard on and see if you can work it out. Now if that ball with a yard on, weighted ball colliding with it, travelled half a yard, what about that? It ought to travel 1 yard.
go a bit further.
There's the red stick is actually there, isn't it? 1 yard.
Does that mean a 3 yard will be yard and a half?
Yard and a half, 4 yards, 2 yards. 5 yards, 2.5 yards, 6 yards, 3 yards. And it happens pro rata. Worth knowing?
Yeah.
Worth knowing, yeah.
But very often you ask the skip to have a yard's weight on, and of course 9 times out of 10 ditch weight.
I certainly agree with what you're saying, but I feel, and especially when I'm watching some of these real high-class bowlers playing on the television, that they are playing with a yard on. They're playing with 2 yards on. They are playing with precision. And I have a feeling that over the last 10 years or so, the precision of ball has increased and increased. So people are playing with marvellous touch, really.
Yeah, but wouldn't you also agree that the playing surfaces have improved?
They have, yes, they have.
So they can
Put that
play
down
some
to-
shots with confidence.
What do you put that down to?
I would put it down to the amount of money people are prepared to spend
Yeah.
to provide an excellent playing surface.
And I think it's got a lot to do with playing indoors as well.
Indoors.
It's got a lot to do with playing indoors. Bowlers are not now playing for 4 months in the year. They're now playing for 12 months in the year. And the skills are increasing all the time. And when they can play on a surface that is absolutely, truly reliable, then they can start to play with this sort of finesse. So it's a useful thing to know about. Now let's have a look at something rather different. Here we have our ball, which is a yard short of the full point that the ball would travel to. And have you got a jack? Have you got oh, there we are. This time, if I can, I'm going to make sure that the jack is touching the ball. Now, I don't want to cheat about this.
I think that's pretty good.
Well, if somebody would like to get down and have a look to see whether there's any gap at all, you can get as close as you like.
No good for Uber to go down. You haven't got a good eye.
He hasn't got a good eye. Right. Is it touching?
Yep.
It's touching?
Yep.
Have you got some stickers, Shirley? Because I'd like to look and see how far the jack actually travelled this time. Now, you can't do it until we've watched how far it goes. So if you could be just here ready, but wherever the jack goes to anyway, whichever distance, she's standing a long way away. What do you think about that, Jack? How far do you think it's going to run?
It's going to spring.
It's going to spring.
At least for your...
That's a good word, isn't it? Because it's a word we use. The jack is going to spring. How far is it going to spring?
4 feet.
4 feet, you say?
Yep.
4 feet.
Half a yard.
Isn't it curious that you're talking about it springing 4 feet, and yet when the ball ran onto the jack went less than a yard. So you're actually increasing that distance because the jack is touching the ball. Right. Would you like to let us have a look at that? You weren't actually far from your 4 feet, really.
You went far. Would you like to put a sticker underneath the jack? Just to show where it's got.
It's 3 foot 6 inches. Do it. You were 6 inches out, you were 6 inches.
Well, if I put that back there,
It's certainly,
it's more than 6 inches.
it's about 3 feet 8.
There you are. You're
So you're very, very close to 4 feet.
Now, let's have a look at this. This time, we've got the ball in the same place. This time, I'm going to have a little gap.
How big is that?
I'm looking at it, about 16,
16.
something like that.
millimeters.
Small gap?
Very small.
Very small gap, yeah.
But a gap.
But there is a gap.
There is a gap, yeah.
Now,
The spring's gone.
the spring has gone. That's right, the spring has gone. That sounds awful, doesn't it? The spring has gone. Anyway, as you say, the spring has now gone because the jack is not touching the ball. Now, what about the jack this time? How far do you think it's going to travel this time?
18 inches.
About 18 inches? Yeah? Because there is no contact. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Would you like to try that?
Oh, sorry.
Try it again. Would you like to put the sticker down for us?
Eh? Yes. Amazing.
But I wasn't sure.
The spring was still there, Pete. Sure.
What?
I suppose.
And in fact, something happened that most people do not expect.
Yeah.
Virtually every bowler that I've spoken to and put the same question to has said it will not travel so far. And yet, every time you do it, it travels further. On this particular green, it's travelled a good 6 inches further. And 6 inches on a yard is quite a high percentage, really, when you think about it. Quite a high percentage. We'll take it back to the 2-yard marker.
Yeah,
Have a look at that.
right.
Was it touching?
Touching this time, yes. Touching. Now, it was about 3 feet 8. About 3 feet 8 with the 1 yard on. So what are we going to look at this time, do you think?
5 feet.
About 5 feet. So you've added another 1 foot 4 or thereabouts.
So there's still the gap.
No, that's
There we
a
go.
It is touching.
Touch it.
Try to get.
Well, you've got to make sure because it's important.
Oh, sorry, it's reflected.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think it's reflection. It's actually
So it's
Lovely.
so the spring has returned. That's where it was first time. So you've just, not quite, but you've nearly doubled the distance with a 2 yard on the road.
Yeah.
Now let's go back to what happened before,
The gap.
the gap. I'm not always sure I can get exactly the same gap.
straight.
I don't know, I wonder. We'll make the guess.
Yeah, but they go further.
So will the...
They go further. People further. Wouldn't you? Yeah, I expect you.
Yeah, similar sort of gap. Let's see what I'm aiming at. Hang on a minute. Let's see if we can get it going in the same sort of line.
Same sort of gap.
Same sort of gap, I think.
Yeah, that ain't bad.
Right, let's have a look at that.
Exactly.
A bit further.
About 20.
bit better than it went before. It's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing.
Well, there we are. I hope you've enjoyed and learned something from the video. And may I, on behalf of the English Bowls Coaching Scheme, express my thanks to those players who took part. They were all from the Stenleys Bowling Club, and indeed to Bodmin Indoor Bowling Club. I trust that some of the points raised in the video will provide you with some good discussion sessions at some later date.